Thank you. Now, our first question is going to be one about school start times. So how do you think that school start times should be adjusted to meet the needs of families and students, as well as addressing the district transportation costs and logistics? And for this one, Ms. Marvin, Ms. Nathan, Mr. Youssef, Mr. Mohammed, Chief, Mr. Cook, and then if Patrick Farmer joins us, he will be the last. So that's the order that you will have to answer. So first of all, Dr. Marvin.
Thank you. Start times continue to be a really important issue and very contentious one. Volumes of research have been done, have demonstrated that during adolescence, young people are hardwired to stay up later and to sleep in, and then they can be chronically sleep deprived if they're getting to school too early. We also know that younger children wake up earlier naturally, and their best learning hours are earlier in the day. We have struggled with this for decades. We know what's good for kids. The issue is transportation. We are laser focused on getting this right. We're going to dig into it again this fall. And if we can figure out the transportation issue, and this may take a big reimagination of how our district works, we need to do better for all of our students.
Thank you.
8:30 start time is really optimal for our students. It tells us that a start time after 8:30 is good for our middle and high school students. And our elementary educators told us that an earlier start time is the optimal time for our early learners to learn. But our community told us we also have to not think of start times, but end times, because we have to consider the afternoons when there's jobs, activities, athletics, childcare needs, family times, and early bedtimes for our younger students. So in order to get to a single start time, we need to get to a one-tier busing system. We have a two-tier system now. A one-tier means doubling our buses, our bus drivers, and our costs. So this year we are going to focus on that examination of what are the drivers of our transportation costs and how can we get to a cost for transportation that we can afford.
Thank you. And Mr. Youssef. You know, you're muted. Thank you.
Yes, so I believe parents and students need to have start times that fit their unique challenges and circumstances. Childcare is one of our country's biggest problems, and school times must reflect that. The last 2 hours and the first 2 hours of the day are the most important, and I believe we can have a program similar to Rocket Hour at John Marshall, where the first 2 hours are more of classes or coursework that are not reflective of the curriculum, and then the same with the last 2 hours. That way we can help those individuals who have difficult circumstances to get into class early, and those who have to do activities after work as well, and try to accommodate that as well. We also think that parents, students, and staff need to work together, and as a candidate for the board, I plan to leverage this kind of opportunity and make sure that all groups of people are on board, backed by the data as well.
Great. Thank you. And Mr. Cook.
Yes, I mean, I think I can echo some of the comments that have already been stated, that the difficulty here is finding a way to align the transportation resources that the district has with what everyone would like to see, which is later start times for the middle and high school students, and preferably, especially given the feedback that we got last year in the form of teacher surveys and family surveys, moving the elementary school times earlier than they are currently. You know, one of the, I'll just highlight one of the challenges that I recognize is that having the elementary schools start at 9:30 or 9:40 in the morning is challenging when parents start work at 9 o'clock. And while that's not the sole driver, it is just one of those other considerations that makes this a tough nut to crack. But the transportation piece is really at the crux of it, to align the district's resources with all of those multifaceted needs. So very interested in trying to get that done.
Thank you. And just a reminder to our audience, as some of you may have come in late, we are keeping only the candidates on screen and unmuted so that we can focus on our candidates. So in case you're wondering, that is what we are trying to do, because we have enough candidates. We want to make sure we can see all of them. Our next question is one that we know has been somewhat contentious. And so the question is worded from the community was, it has been proven that masks keep our children healthy and there are no detrimental effects of wearing masks except for special needs, etc. What actions will you recommend to keep our students healthy should COVID have a huge resurgence this fall and winter? And we have a related question that I will be asking in the same order, related to those who may be uncomfortable with the stance, both teachers and families. So this will be, first of all, Mr. Mohammed Chief, then Justin Cook, then Mr. Youssef, then Ms. Nathan, and then Dr. Marvin. So first of all, Mr. Mohammed Chief, if you would begin that, and I'll have you unmute yourself. There you go.
So the other question, the way you only ask 3 people. You jumped to the remaining people. I never answered the other basically question that you asked.
Did I?
You jumped.
I jumped. I'm sorry. Which did I jump? Wait. Tell me, what did I jump?
The last question.
About
starting school early.
Starting school day. Did I miss you?
Of course you missed me on another person.
I'm sorry. All right. All right. We will back up. I got a little bit with our trying to get the screens right. So yes. So then please tell us about transportation.
If we are not welcome, I can excuse myself and get out.
No. And I appreciate you letting me know. So did I miss anyone else in that go round? Okay. All right. So Mr. Mohammed Chief, would you please, first of all, tell us about your views on the start times?
Not getting enough sleep, it's a common among high school students, and those factors are associated health risks, including, overweight, drinking, smoking, tobacco, using drugs, and as well as basically gaining an poor academic performance. One of the reasons adolescents is not to get enough sleep, it's an early school starting. And there's a lot put out as recommended. Middle school and high schoolers start ready to sleep, enough to do the homeworks. There's a lot of homeworks, as you know, and kids that come to sports activities that come to home 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, that do their homeworks after that 10, 11 o'clock to 12, go to bed and go living 6 o'clock. That is not enough sleep 5 days a week. It's tough. So my recommendation is those to follow up and create a consensus opportunities between the parents and the school, and create a good opportunity for the transportation for it after the consensus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, and so we'll return to the next question. And I apologize to any of you. Please feel free to let me know if I have missed you in any way. So we are back to the question about masks and what actions will you recommend to keep our students healthy should COVID have a huge resurgence this fall? And again, the order will be back to you, Mr. Chief, then Mr. Cook, then Mr. Youssef, Ms. Nathan, and Dr. Marvin. So yes. All right. So you get to take this one first, Mr. Mohammed Chief.
Okay.
Yeah.
The masks, the concern of masks, it created unfortunately the COVID issues that is running the worldwide. The health is priority of this community and the country and worldwide, in every individual household as well. We need to look at it. We live in Rochester. We are fortunate to live this city by having a Mayo Clinic and other Olmsted County medical centers recommended by CDC and among other institutions, including our Mayo Clinic here. If there is availability of those diseases that it prevents it, if it prevents it, those masks for COVID and any related diseases, I will create it and follow up with those recommended by health institutions and take it from there. Because we do have some of the parents or some of the community members who are not vaccinated, who are not allowing to vaccinate their kids, all of those, they have a freedom to do that, whatever they want, but we cannot allow those kids basically who are struggling for the health-wise through the COVID due to the poor of decision-making or accepting personal values and religions and morals, not vaccinating all of those. We will accept to have a common good for all, cover your face.
Okay, thank you. And then Mr. Cook.
It's a good question. I think as far as the COVID numbers this fall and winter, we're all going to be hoping for the best, but life favors the prepared here. So it's good to have plans. And here's what I'm focused on. I think it's really important that we do our utmost to keep the schools open and safe. It's best for students. I think this has been borne out. Keeping the schools open is really, really, really important. And so, and then the second piece is, while this entire process has been chaotic and difficult to cope with for so many, being as transparent as possible in the decision-making, the data that's being used to make those decisions, and any adjustments, whether that's the precautions that are going to be mandatory, meaning masks or otherwise, or any adjustments to the learning model, heaven forbid, making it as transparent as possible how those decisions will be made, the data that will be used to make it transparent so that it becomes as predictable as possible for the families that will be affected so that they can plan accordingly and make whatever adjustments to their families that they need to. But ultimately, it's about following the science here. We have great experts at Mayo Clinic, Olmsted County Public Health, and following those expert recommendations to keep the schools safe and open.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Youssef.
Thank you. So I want to say that we have the Mayo Clinic in our backyard, who recently became #1 again consecutively, and is a great example. The Mayo Clinic has physicians that give recommendations to patients for their treatments. However, the patients have the choice to make their own decisions. However, they need to accept the consequence of those decisions, given the best recommendation of the doctors. In a similar way, wearing a mask is the best interest of everyone, especially when it's recommended by the Department of Health and backed by science and data. The goal here is to prevent an outbreak, and wearing masks can bring fewer challenges than what distance learning can bring. So my recommendation is to work with our state departments, our health departments, our local hospitals, and make sure we make decisions that are beneficial for everyone involved. Remember, the decision, your personal decision can affect you, but when your decision affects those around you, it becomes a global problem. And I think that is something we need to consider for our students' health and safety, and make sure they are able to learn effectively and efficiently.
Thank you. And Ms. Nathan?
So towards the end of the year last year, the district adopted a masking policy that if 5% of the students or staff tested positive, then the whole building or program went to masking. And the data shows that that was very effective in keeping our schools open and keeping our students and staff healthy. So to kick off the school year, I think that's the approach that we're going to go with. But like my colleagues here have said, listening to the Mayo Clinic and Olmsted County Public Health in the event that we do see a resurgence in cases is going to be important to modifying that masking policy. I also want to point out that masking isn't the only mitigation. We have the ventilation in our buildings that continues to be upgraded with our indoor air quality projects and the HEPA air filters that we have in every classroom and in every learning area. And we can continue to encourage vaccinations through hosting clinics or getting information out to the community as to where they can get vaccinations.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Marvin.
Yeah, I can't add a whole lot to what others have said because excellent points here. We follow the science. Our schools are safer than they've ever been. Vaccinations continue to be important. And I know that masking was a real hot topic the last couple of years. Parents want to decide for their own children what they should do. And for the most part, I completely support that. When children are not in school, parents absolutely can decide and will decide whether their kids will mask or not. Again, if we have a resurgence of the pandemic. But our main focus in the past has been to keep our schools open. And if enough bus drivers, paraprofessionals, teachers get infected, we have to close them. So I would absolutely continue to support following the science, the recommendation of the CDC, Olmsted, and Mayo Clinic going forward.
Great, thank you. And now related to this, and I'm going to follow the same order, Mr. Chief, Mr. Cook, Mr. Youssef, Ms. Nathan, Dr. Marvin. A related question that is that there are teachers that have left the district because they would be required to teach hybrid classes with students in the room and online at the same time. Many families are also concerned about this as a possibility for their students. What is your view on hybrid classes and how we might avoid having these situations? So again, we will start with Mr. Chief. Are you, oops, we have to unmute. Okay, all right, yes.
And the question of teaching a hybrid and non-hybrid, I was fortunate, basically. I was fortunate to do part of my graduate school, and through the KTEX was University of Colorado. And now most of the universities are offering in schools hybrid level. And I was fortunate also to participate in classes that's composed about a multiple region as far as Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, all the England, Ireland, all of the students come from all of these areas. And teaching hybrid, it is a positive, it has a positive. And when you're creating and allowing also non-hybrid, they both contain benefits. And it depends where we see and where we gather those. Teaching students and allowing, offering the high-end courses, high-end technologies, intercommunication for the multicultural students, and gathering different opportunities. We can get and allow to make them comfortable by increasing technology subsidies. Problems is that technology is number one factor is technology subsidies.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Cook.
Yeah, so this question brings back flashbacks from the last couple of years. There were a number of different changes in the instruction model, as so many parents and teachers and students will remember, although to some extent you've probably tried your best to block chunks of it out. You know, in my family and most of the parents that I know and most of the families that I know, in person is definitely preferred. Distance learning was a less preferred option, and hybrid, both the version that's described in the question here students are assigned to two different groups and they switch off which ones are in school on which days, and then participate in asynchronous learning on the other days. That was by far the worst. While it might seem like a sort of compromise between the two positions, it generally just worked out to be the worst of all options. You know, part of that could have been because everyone was stressed during the pandemic. Who knows? But I don't want to go back, and I don't think teachers do either. So I would not be in favor of re-implementing that.
Thank you. Mr. Youssef, your thoughts on going on hybrid learning?
Thank you. This is a unique challenge because our teachers have a professional standard to make sure classrooms are being taught without disruption. Parents have a need to make sure our students are not falling behind, and we need to approach this problem in a way that if a child is exposed to COVID or missing several days due to precaution, the curriculum is flexible enough to make sure students are not falling behind. What we must do is have a hybrid curriculum that allows the student to still participate and not fall behind. We have unprecedented challenges that force us to think of innovative solutions. We need to stand with our teacher. They have the tools need to best teach our kids. Within the same breath, we need to make sure our students have ample resources so that they don't fall behind. The teaching plans need to include things that the students can do while they're away or recovering. And I think this is a problem that can be solved through innovative technologies
Thank
as
you.
well.
And Ms. Nathan?
So I think we can all agree that the hybrid model was not optimal. But unfortunately, it was necessary at the time primarily to achieve social distancing and to address absent staff and students during COVID. Now, should the pandemic circumstances change and we have distancing again, and we want to avoid distance learning, I would consider an alternative mode of having half of the students attend in our buildings every other day, and then try to rally the community around people who have spaces and community volunteers to meet the needs of students on the days they're not in the school buildings, to supervise their homework, to help them with projects, to help them with the work that their teachers assign them. That would minimize the impact on families of having to cover childcare for students being at home learning during hybrid, and it would meet our social distancing requirements. But I would only look at this option in the event that we were told by our public health authorities that we really had to implement this social distancing because the pandemic had risen to a big contagion level.
Thank you. And Dr. Marvin?
Thank you. Our district has had some hybrid classes like advanced math for years, and it's done that successfully. But our recent experience during the pandemic has shown us proof positive that hybrid classes are tough. They're tough for students, they're tough for teachers, and they don't work the same K-12 as they do for graduate students. Recently, we've had some secondary classes that, due to low enrollment, would need to be taught, these are electives, would need to be taught either hybrid or not at all. So I think we need to keep a very minimal use of hybrid classes available when necessary, and only after they're sort of the last option, and that staff and administration agree that on a case-by-case basis they're needed.
Thank you. Our next question is one related to busing. So several years ago, discussions were held between the City Council and School Board about making more use of public buses for middle and high school students. What is your position on again addressing this approach to transportation issues for our students? For this one, we will have Justin Cook, followed by Mr. Youssef, Dr. Marvin, Mr. Mohammed Chief, and Ms. Nathan. So again, considering the discussions that had been held between City Council and School Board about making more use of public buses for our middle and high school students. Mr. Cook.
I'm open-minded here on anything that is going to, any option should be on the table if it has the potential to reduce a pain point for the district. We've already alluded to the transportation challenges in aligning start times with the best learning times for our students and what the science suggests on what those ought to be. And any option that makes that more affordable or brings more capacity to the transportation needs that the district has should absolutely be on the table. In 2018 or so, when this was being looked at, there were some strong counterpoints that were raised about concerns about having students on city buses and sort of outside of the traditionally supervised environment that they've had on the school buses. That's also really important and needs to be part of that conversation, but I'm very open-minded to it. I'm very interested in digging into the data and exploring that again, if it makes sense to address some of the both budgetary and transportation constraint needs that the district has.
Great, thank you. Mr. Youssef.
Thank you. I served on the city transit committee where we worked on the new rapid transit project. And from that experience, I know what it's possible in making an efficient, safe, and reliable transit system for our students. I firmly believe we can work with the city to incorporate the middle school and high school students through our new bus systems and hopefully expand so that we can get students to school on time. The problem here is if students cannot get to school on time, they fall behind, and it contributes to the many pain points that we already have. And getting students to school in an efficient manner through the help of our innovative new systems and expanding and working with the county and the city as well can help us achieve that goal. And our priority should be getting the students to school as quickly as possible and as efficiently. And I think when we look at it from that perspective, we could provide an innovative solution.
Great, thank you. Dr. Marvin.
Yeah, the last time we discussed this with the city council, we couldn't come to a good answer. Financially, it wasn't going to work. And in terms of the geography that was being covered, it wasn't going to work. Rochester School District is huge. It's about 218 square miles. So we need a lot of buses in a lot of spaces. I think we need to revisit this because if we can get our secondary students riding city buses, not only will it make sense financially, it'll help for start times. And ecologically, I think it's a good model to follow where the kids get used to using mass transit. So I would absolutely revisit this.
Thank you. Mr. Mohammed Chief. Not quite, there you go. There, thank you.
I think we need to study, as the colleagues here mentioned, all of them, and look at the opportunities that it creates. Those factors that I can recognize here, it's a security for the public process for these children, and it created pros and cons, the benefits that it generates it, and also, as the other colleagues mentioned, the sizing wise, and the stoppage and delivering school students on time classes and pick them up and sell it. I've seen some of the relatives here, they took a bus from the school and it delivers them about more than about 6 o'clock, almost 5:45 to their homes. And those buses actually delayed because where the stoppage, how many stops do they have to make? And I believe there is a room for the studying and a good opportunity to find out where buses fit one another and how the city benefits, city transportation needs it actually. And they establish right now electric buses. I believe that can be safe too.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Nathan.
So when we considered using public buses to facilitate the later start times, at last estimate, that would cost the district an additional $6 million, not because of the cost of the city buses, but because of what it would do to our busing routes and our busing contract. So again, we have to go back to our transportation costs, and we really have to dig in how we can make our transportation more efficient with our yellow buses. And that might mean looking at district-wide option schools. It might mean looking at the arrangement of our bus routes to try to find the costs where we could accommodate the additional costs of moving some of our children to that city bus system. But I agree, we have to look at the city buses. We do have a number of students who are walkers who like to use the city bus. And I think that they've shown that that can be an efficient transportation vehicle for them.
Great, thank you. Now, our next question is from several different parts of. So how we can make all children feel welcome in the classroom through curriculum, peer teachers, etc. So how would you see a way to make all children feel welcomed in the classroom? And we then have some sub questions, and I think we have enough time, so we'll treat those questions separately. So first of all, your first thoughts about making children feel welcome, all children feel welcome in the classroom. We'll start with Ms. Nathan, then Dr. Marvin, Mr. Cook, Mr. Youssef, and Mr. Mohammed Chief. So Ms. Nathan, your thoughts on making all children feel comfortable in the classroom?
Well, we asked our students and our educators this very question during a perspectives project and our focus groups when we were developing the strategic plan. And they told us they want school cultures that have empathy, openness, respect, and support for students from all walks of life. They suggested we provide more positive behavior reinforcement and acknowledgement of their academic efforts, more mental health resources for students and training for staff, more elective classes and extracurricular activities, especially at middle school, peer mentorship and student-led classes, and hiring more staff of color. As a school board member, I plan to support and monitor the strategic plan initiatives that address these concerns that our students and staff brought us, and the school climate and safety plans that each of our buildings are developing, making sure they respond to the feedback and have a positive impact on our students this year.
Thank you. Dr. Marvin.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, our students are going to feel welcomed when they know that they are respected and valued for exactly who they are, that there are no expectations that they have to become a standardized student or be molded to somebody else's expectations about what they need to be. Our teachers need to continue to develop strategies, many different strategies for teaching to different strengths and for listening to and learning from our students. The curriculum absolutely has to reflect the background of the kids who come through our doors. And the stories our children read need to have heroes who look like them. They need to know that we value how they think, that we're not going to tell them what to think. And importantly, students need to see that education is important for their future, that they have a purpose and that they can write the story of their own future.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
First off, I'm in radical agreement that one of the best ways to ensure that students feel welcomed in the school environment is to ask them and to listen. And so, yes, I think that the Perspectives Project was incredibly important in prioritizing the concerns that were identified there are rightfully included in the strategic plan, and I would be focused on ensuring that those items are implemented. One other thing that I'd highlight is just as a school board, I think part of what the function of the school board is to set the tone for the rest of the district and to just make clear what the priorities are and what priorities are valued. And I really think that the importance that has been placed on building individual relationships with students one-on-one and prioritizing that relationship building as a individual one-by-one, case-by-case basis that builds a school climate and a school environment that is welcoming is really, really important. The research backs it up, and I would continue to reiterate the importance of that important effort.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Muhammad Chief. Oops.
Yep. Yes, thank you. First of all, students, welcoming students in schools is a must and responsibility for the teachers, the school teachers, principals, and part of the parents. And it's an ownership for total ownership together. My recommendation is to develop a strong relationship, teacher and student relationship. And that puts the students in the best position to grow and flourish. Students basically need to trust and follow the teachers, especially at the younger ages, where they most possess a strong interpersonal relationship skills and self-confidence. Academic performance. Allow academic performance being taught and create academic courses and curriculums that up to date, up to the point, that offers the technology, non-technology, all of the sectors of a new generations, new beginnings, new offerings that can flourish in students. In all of those social and emotional health, Students' social and emotional health is the most important thing, and I believe their academic standings and performances. No student should feel unwelcome, intimidated, isolated, bullied, and I mean, making them indisciplined easily, segregating, putting the places. All of these factors could, you need to increase. And after all, the final end, create and allow teachers to be trained, help, and develop also their skill sets, how to welcome those students.
Thank you. We've just been in communication a bit, if you may have noticed me. We're not hearing the bell completely. We are going to be able to go to a minute for most of these questions, looking at the time, since we only have 5 candidates. However, we're going to try and listen for that bell a little longer, because we're almost all, I know, and so we're going to try and get it a little louder. And you've all been very good. And I think we've been equitable. We're trying to be equitable with all of you with the answers, but we're going to try to get that bell a little louder so that you can hear it. And we'll be able to go to a minute for these questions. I know it's not a lot of time, but we will try to do that. So that's what we've been trying to do, if we can get that bell sound a little better. So thank you for that. Our next question is then related to this. So how, in making children welcome, one of the ways that we might do it is trying to partner with our community to help create a student body. I'm sorry, are you not hearing, sir? Raise your hand.
I think I was skipped.
Oh, okay, so here I did again, and thank you. Trying to get this bell question. Yes, I definitely want you to be able to tell me how you feel make all children welcome.
Thank you. Put yourself in the shoes of students. Students go to school for learning. However, a major component of their learning is the environment that they are in. If they feel comfortable, students are able to learn better. But one of the biggest factors for students' learning outcomes is that they want to see people that look like them. They want to see teachers and role models that they can resonate with. However, our staffing and our student ratio does not match up quite equally. And what we want to do is make sure we have staff that are representative of the students. In addition to that, when I was at Mayo High School, we had a program called Link Crew, where when you came into high school, you had students that are a little bit older ready to welcome you. And that environment impacted a lot of students and gave them a positive outlook and made them feel welcome. We want to do that at a deeper level when the school starts. And we want to make sure that students feel safe, that there should be zero tolerance for all forms of hate, from staff, from teachers to peers. And we want to make sure every student is heard and understood, and that they are represented equitably and equally as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. I apologize for that. And so as I started to talk about, we'd like to see what ways that you might think about having the school district partner with the community, whether individuals or nonprofits or other groups, to help work to create our finest students. This is going to be Dr. Marvin, followed by Mr. Youssef, Mr. Chief, Ms. Nathan, and Mr. Cook. So Dr. Marvin, how can a school district partner with the community to improve our students' education overall?
Well, it's an old saying that it takes a village to raise a child, but it's never been more true. We absolutely need to continue and expand the partnerships that already exist. Some of them help with food and housing insecurity, with medical and dental partnerships, with tutoring. We also need to invite more community members to volunteer as mentors, to sign up to be substitute teachers. We need to begin earlier to take our students into the community so the community can help them explore post-secondary education and careers, and convince them why it's so important to stay in school. We need businesses in the community to partner with us, more businesses to provide hands-on experiences and apprenticeships in the world of work. The community really can and should become the classroom for our students, and the more that businesses reach in, the better things are going to be for everyone.
Thank you. Then Mr. Youssef, how can we help the school? How can the school district partner with the community?
Well, the first step is to evaluate and to analyze our workforce. We want to make sure students, when they get out of high school, they're well prepared and have the opportunity to see the different types of work they can do. We need to consider trade. We need to make sure our workforce is equipped, and we need to have individuals from different firms, companies, and to come to school on a regular basis and show them the different possibilities that exist. We want to make sure our kids are coming back to Rochester. They go out to learn at different schools, but we're not able to retain our students. We create fine products of students. We want them to excel. We want to encourage them to come back to Rochester by providing ample opportunities. A good example is internships, opportunities where students can get a little bit of experience in a different department or a different area or an expertise. It gives them that real world experience. And what that does is, in most cases, internships will lead to a permanent job. And we want to make sure we consider that and have our students be well prepared in making decisions and thinking about their long-term future.
Thank
And I
you.
think it starts at a very young age as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chief. Okay, we need you to unmute. Thank you.
To my recommendations I would develop a parent academy and parent consensus parent committees to engage empower parents as a partners in their children's education. We're in the process of always moving and asking, what can we do? There is an issue that not following up what worked and what failed. We're in the process. This school district existed years and years and years. There is areas that they underperformed always. There are a lot of, as a predecessor and colleagues and all of those that who left it at this school board always mentioned. It was students are leaving. Rochester School, secondary schools are not making top ranks in this nation, in this state. John Marshall, Mayo High School, and Century are not at the top 100 in the state. Lourdes private school and also Byron are making the top 100 school. School District 196 is making better than Rochester RBS. So the question is, what worked, what didn't work? Question is, we need to replace the ideas that did not work. Create within the community consensus, bring parents to be responsible, and create a committees with their children's school. Ideas are welcome always. And
Thank you, thank you. Ms. Nathan.
Well, I could talk about the existing partnerships, CTEC, PTEC, our Project Search, and the good partnerships we've had with IBM and the Mayo Clinic, our food service community, our construction trades. But I also want to talk, give a little plug to Cradle to Career, which is a community coalition that's really focusing on birth to K readiness and the transition into high school and through graduation. I think those we can learn from and build from. I think we need to look at the Rise for Youth program that the NAACP implemented this year and see what kind of lessons they learned, because they were focusing on connecting students with the community. So I really want to focus on individuals. I think we have the capacity to activate the individuals in our community, to volunteer in our schools, to participate in existing mentorship programs like Strive, the Reading and Math Corps, the Reading Champions through the Rochester Public Library. We're talking about building relationships with people. We need the people for the students to build the relationships with. And I think it would benefit our students in our community to grow the cadre of people they can build relationships with to people who represent our whole community.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Cook.
Yes, partnership with the community is partnership between the community and the school district is near and dear to my heart, because it aligns a lot of interests together in sort of a synergistic way. And I guess just to take one, I think expanding mentoring is really important and would certainly benefit our students, but it also gives our community an opportunity to get into our schools, meet our students, and and understand the value that the schools are bringing to the community. Because one of the values that I believe strongly in and that I remind people of every chance I get is, while I have 4 kids in the district, a strong public school system is essential to a strong community. It yields a more diverse, robust economy, and it really provides the ties that bind our community together. And it's revealed even this summer in the Safe City Nights programs that have been rallied around the school sites at Jefferson and at Falwell and other places. So just building those community partnerships is extremely important. I think mentoring is a big part of it. And I love the call out for the Rise for Youth program. I'm proud to be on the executive committee of the NAACP, and it really is an innovative, first in the nation program that we were delighted to be able to work with the Rochester schools to recruit students for that program.
Great, thank you. Now, our next question deals with, again, making a specific segment of our children feeling welcomed. And this has to do with, how would you address the homeless students in our district? And for this one, Mr. Cook, you will be going again right now, and then Mr. Youssef, Dr. Marvin, Mr. Chief, and Ms. Nathan. So Mr. Cook, again, how would you address, as a part of the school board, the homeless students in our district?
Yeah, really important question. I think there's a lot of learnings that can be taken from the community schools that are really models of success in meeting the needs, multifaceted needs of the students in those communities at Riverside, Gage, John Marshall, and the Rochester Alternative Learning Center. But while that's a good model, I think it's important to remember that meeting the needs of students in transition really does need to be a core competency of every single school in the district. There are students that at one point or another during the school year will experience a period of transition, I believe at every single site. And so it comes down to meeting the needs of the student as an individual, case by case, one at a time. That's how you unleash their full potential, and then we all benefit from the opportunities that they're provided with, and to identify and pursue their passions.
Thank you. Mr. Youssef, how would you address as a member of the school board, the problem or the situation of homeless students in the district?
Yes. As a student, I have seen firsthand some of my classmates suffer with homelessness. We have solutions that we offer here in our school district, and we kind of approach it from the top of the staircase, meaning that students must complete a bunch of steps before they find shelter. And for other cities and even other countries such as Finland, they offer shelter at the bottom of the staircase, meaning that students are provided a place to live at first, as the first step. Having a shelter doesn't mean that they have a home. And the Department for Housing and Urban Development has a problem in identifying how many students are truly homeless in our school district. For example, the data is usually underreported. Students tend to couch surf, and most importantly, students don't feel comfortable talking about their status. So what we need to do is we need to work together. We must work together with our community partners in the city to provide better solutions that places a housing option for our students at bottom of the staircase, meaning as the first approach, without any checkpoints or any milestones. Rather, we provide them housing first, because once you have housing, you have the ability to learn and work yourself out of that situation with the help of community partners. We need to offer laundry services. Some students come to school that are homeless and don't have access to sanitary services. We need to have better access for our internet. We need to have ability to have better reporting. And I definitely look forward to working with our colleagues on the school board and our community and school district and this sensitive topic. And I have a lot to say about this topic, but I will conclude here at this point.
Yes, thank you very much. Dr. Marvin.
Yeah, this is such an important issue, because we have a lot of students who are students in transition and for whom homelessness or home insecurity is a huge issue. When kids come to school in the morning, not knowing if they're going to go to bed hungry, or even if there's going to be a bed for them at all, they're not going to focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. We do have, as Mr. Cook mentioned, community schools, and they do provide clothes closets and food pantries. Some of them have washing and dryers. They have access to technology, counseling and services and social work. And there's not enough time to talk about all the services that our school district offers. But we have a number of them. It's still not enough to do all the work that needs being done. So we also partner with wonderful city and county organizations, including Family Promise, Olmsted County's Empowering Connections and Housing Outreach, Three Rivers, and a number of others. This really is a community imperative, and we really do need to continue to work together.
Thank you. And Mr. Chief. Mr. Chief? Are you, wait, we're not hearing you.
Because you moved me out, you put me on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's why.
So,
No problem. No problem. The factor of homelessness, we need to study first what creates those homelessness. This factor of schools being responsible for these school basically homelessness for the youth. I was fortunate enough to learn. I was part of the team that recruited and hired and also built Rise Up and Rise High, NAACP and Mayo. I was part of the team that did that. Talking to the kids that some of them even didn't have a clothes to go to interview, suits, jackets, shoes, all of these factors. I think, to my view, I would build a partnership between these schools and learning also the social services, housing and city housing, and the communities that engage those children's welfare. All of this, I will partner and build with it. Two, the most important, what creates those issues? And the kids, some of the kids are well off, their parents are at home, and they cannot even go back at home. Factoring and learning what creates those issues, it's a must. And mental health also is another factor that those kids run out of their homes. What creates those homelessness and runaway kids? We need to study and provide the solution for common good for all.
thank you. All right. And then, one of the questions that has come up, and Ms. Nathan, and I have your name down here. I'm sorry, still trying to work out, making sure you can hear the bell, and I'm not focusing. So yes, and I appreciate all of you with your patience while we're trying to work these out. So yes, your thoughts on the homeless students in the district.
Well, I appreciate all the comments about partnering with the community. And I think that the district's in a strong position to do that because we have a devoted full-time staff person who focuses on our students experiencing homelessness. And that staff person implements our federal requirement that we have to provide services to these students. We have a specific school board policy 560 that spells out exactly the services we have to provide to students. And that includes allowing students to stay in the same school throughout the year, even if their housing situation changes, and providing transportation for the students no matter where they are living at the time. We also have social workers in each school who are the prime contact points for the students who are experiencing homelessness. And we make sure that we track the data on an ongoing basis so that we know that we always are connecting with the students who we're identifying. And that number is about 400 to 500 students a year. So it is a large number, but we have that point person in the district that I think will be a great foundation for all of these community partnerships we've all been talking about.
Great. Thank you. A difficult question, I know, for all of us to have to deal with, but it is one that's a very important one in this district. What approaches should be made for equity in disciplinary actions? And for this, the order will be Mr. Youssef, Ms. Nathan, Mr. Cook, Mr. Muhammad Chief, and Dr. Marvin. So again, what approaches should be taken or should we be taking for dealing with equity in disciplinary actions?
Thank you. 70% of the students from the data provided by the Ministry Department of Education has students of color as the individuals who are disciplined. Of 40% of that 70% are those students with disability. In the most recent data, that number dropped to 38%. And that is not a number to be proud of. We need to find better representation and have strong representation in our school districts. The issue here is when people and students are being disciplined, we need to have a standardized way of disciplining the students. Sometimes when you don't have people there to support you through different situations and troubles, you end up getting involved in situations that are not favorable. And as a student in the school district, I've witnessed this firsthand as well. When you have supportive teachers and you have supportive staff, principals that work with you, you tend to do better. When you have students that are not being heard or not being listened to or not being allowed to understand their perspective, then you put those students in a situation where they don't feel they should belong or listen or maybe go against the policies. And I think that's one start. We need to do better and we need to make this a priority and need to be convinced that we can have our students feel welcome and safe as well.
Thank you. Ms. Nathan.
So we recently had a report at our study session on our discipline disparities, and it clearly showed that our work has to continue in this area. But I'm encouraged by the work of our Office of Equity and Engagement and that commitment to implementing our equity policy that shows up throughout our strategic plan. This year, a district work group will specifically be reviewing our discipline responses and how we communicate those responses to our building leaders, and how we can have wider and consistent implementation of new practices like restorative practices throughout our district. Our chief of schools shared a matrix of discipline interpretations and applications that are currently used to train our administrators in determining what discipline should be used. There's models from some other districts that are more detailed than our approach that we use that really specify out when a discipline action should be used related to what behaviors and what the options are for applying them to the individual student situations. And I think we can get that insight to make our practices more equitable.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to make sure I don't miss anyone, Mr. Cook.
Yes, thank you. Just to take this out of the weeds for a second, when it comes to disciplinary actions, as all things that involve students, the touchstone is on finding the best way to unlock the potential inside of this individual student to connect them with their passions so that they can pursue those and realize their potential. So that's really at the heart of any disciplinary action. I recognize and I think it's appropriate that individual disciplinary actions are considered individually, case by case, by building teachers and administrators. But the trouble here is that for years, there's in the aggregate, the data reflects disparities in that disciplinary data across various identity groups, eligibility for free and reduced lunch, special education students, racial identities, and all of this informs the school climate and have suggested that there is room to improve in the form of eliminating bias in the disciplinary process. I think continuing to lean into the positive behavioral intervention and supports framework and implementing that framework with fidelity and with support from district administration is key to getting us there, but it needs to continue to be on the school board's radar to continue to monitor our progress against that goal.
Great, thank you. Mr. Muhammad Chief. And we need you to unmute and start.
Thank you. First of all, in all stakeholders should have a goal of promoting and welcoming and caring for all the students, all climate, all of the students. Major components, which is including building sustaining for the culture that embraces the diversity and social caring among equal for all and students and staff. And prevention is the most cost-effective way to eliminate disparities in the school discipline. And also, in addition, schools and low rates of suspension, what we know is the low rates of suspension are most likely to use restorative practices such as referrals to the counselors, conferences, and also the students and the parents. Create environments that are inclusive, all the students, all the parents. Build a committee, a consensus committee from the parents, police, social services, teachers, all of these to be a part of those committee. Monitor data also each years. How many students with discipline? Who are these students? Where they come from? What kind of discipline actions do they take? Non-exclusionary discipline also practices include a mild restoration and restorative practices that might help the students learn proactive problem solving skills and conflict resolution.
Great, thank you. And finally, Dr. Marvin.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that the other speakers have said. This is really, really important. It's also important for every single student who comes into every one of our schools to understand what the rules and the expectations are for behavior and why those are important, as well as the fact that there are consequences when one is a member of a community and one cannot abide by the guidelines. We approved a student handbook last Tuesday. It makes those guidelines, expectations, and consequences clear. It's also critically important that every single staff member develops the cultural competency to objectively and sensitively deal with and de-escalate misbehavior, and so that any kind of consequence includes the opportunity for students to learn how they could do different or do better. Consequences should never be punitive. They should always include that aspect so that students learn from them.
Thank you. We now are at 14 minutes to 8, and we are going to be finishing at 8. And I appreciate all of your comments. We did go a little long on all of the comments that you all had such good things to say. So I hope we were able to capture your thoughts on these. And so now we will have, excuse me, we have 1 minute now for each of you to finish off telling us all why you should be elected to the school board or reelected. So the order that we're going to cover this in will be Mr. Cook, then Mr. Youssef, Ms. Nathan, Dr. Marvin, and Mr. Mohammed Chief. And again, you will each have 60 seconds, and we'll try to maintain that close to 60 seconds. So if you would start, Mr. Cook.
Yes, thank you. Thanks again to the host and the City for Good. And I just wanted to, even though we only have 60 seconds here, I would be remiss if I didn't note that I think it's a shame that the other candidates running for office weren't here tonight. There were a number of occasions where the candidates agreed in the main on several of these topics, and I think that there really are some distinctions to be drawn. And so I hope that those listening and those that will be voting on August 9th will explore all the candidates and find the perspectives that you think belong at the school board before you cast your ballot. Excuse me. I just like so many of you, my family loves our schools and we value our children's teachers, but we're concerned about the future of our school district and the current environment that so often seeks to inject politics into classrooms and sow divisiveness in our community, all to the detriment of our students. We're troubled by the challenges posed in the district's financial forecast, and we're concerned by the recent rates of academic proficiency in our district. Achieving literacy by 3rd grade for every single student in our district is both a strategic and a moral imperative, and I will help focus our district on realizing that goal. I would love to have your support and your vote on August 9th. please visit justinmcook.com to learn more about me. And I hope to have your support.
Thank you. And then we will have Mr. Youssef.
I would like to thank all the candidates who took the time to show up today. I am a student who went through the Rochester public school system, and I have reached one of the highest levels of education. I'm a doctoral candidate who specializes in accounting finance, specifically in the area of emotional intelligence. I am what success looks like, what the Rochester Public Schools can complete. And I understand we have challenges that we need to work through and get resolutions for. But the most important thing is having a candidate who is representative of those individuals who are diverse, minorities, individuals who have different perspectives in life. Have an individual like that at the board who has recently graduated from the school system gives a perspective in making and shaping those policies, those handbooks, those guides. And I feel like once you have someone at the table who understands, who's educated, who went through the school system, then you can really provide solutions and policies that are reflective of the student body, come up with solutions that guide our staff and our hiring process, and making sure our students are heard and students feel safer and welcome when they know there's someone on the board that is diverse. And I'm not just the only diverse candidate, I'm talking about as the board as a whole, having different perspectives in all lives of all walks of life only makes our school system better. And on August, make sure you go out there and vote. Visit abdullahyusuf.com. And I want to echo that we have a lot of work to do, and I am the candidate who can provide that perspective.
Thank you. Ms. Nathan.
Well, this is a critical time for action in Rochester Public Schools. We spent the last year listening to our students, families, and educators, and we crafted detailed plans and initiatives in response to what we heard. This election is critical to determining whether those plans and initiatives will be allowed to be fully implemented. If reelected to the school board, I will provide oversight, monitoring, and feedback to the implementation of the strategic plan and the school climate and safety plans. I will stand for curriculum that teaches honest history and supports every student's race, culture, or identity. I will support the financial and the people resources that will be needed to achieve our outcomes. Success in the classroom begins when all students feel they are safe and welcome and they belong, and when educators and families are respected and supported. I will never stop fighting to make that happen in Rochester Public Schools and would appreciate your vote for me for seat 6 on August 9th.
Thank you. And Dr. Marvin.
As a nation, we've promised our children a quality public education. Right now, I am deeply concerned that nationwide, that promise may be distorted by groups with an agenda. They're using school board elections as a means to promote a narrative intended to instill fear. The fear that if words like race, diversity, equity, culture, or gender are discussed, ideas that we have been discussing in our schools for years, that students are somehow being brainwashed. This is not the message we're getting from students. The focus of these groups is not on the needs of children or what is actually being taught, but on how to censor curriculum, teaching, and critical thinking. I would assume that all of us running for office know that research shows students are more successful and are better prepared for life when they accept, respect, and learn from differences. When they celebrate our government's powerful vision of freedom and liberty for all, while acknowledging the times that vision has faltered, and how we, the people, can work together to continue building a better world for everyone. And I would be honored to continue on the school board to help students build that future.
Thank you. And wrapping this up, Mr. Mohammed Sheif.
Again, thank you for the opportunity that you provided us as a candidate and baseline to come and show our ideas and opinions and what we have. My view, why I need to be elected, I am supporting all of these over 17, 18 years those Rochester School students, some of them work right now, graduated universities and all of this. And until this day, I support them. I tutored them. I coached all of this. I have seen so many ideas that did not work. Current school board and the factors that existed before that did not work. Ideas of change, it is a welcome and it is a must. Ideas of keep repetitive promises that no accountability. I will be accountable to the parents, to the school students, to the school community, all of those. And I will welcome any parents that bring ideology, how their kids to be taught, and welcome to the school board. I would increase that and welcome more. I would also welcome to hiring a diverse cultural teachers and help them getting certificates to teach those schools. Again, I will seek your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Again, as a reminder to our audience, all of the candidates were invited, but 3 of our candidates did ask not to participate, and we have another one who did not. But for those of you who came, thank you very much. We appreciate your input. Again, definitely for everyone, we be sure to vote on August 9th. If you want to learn more about these candidates or any of the others, you can find their Facebook and web pages, and definitely do what you can to learn so that we can have the best candidates chosen for our school board election. So I thank you for this evening. We're going to close the recording now, and we will again hope that you'll all be voting on August 9th. Good night.